You know I try to be a good man, I always give it my best. But truth be told, someday I wanna go to the wild, wild west.
And now, live from our Smokehouse studio, it's time for Real Estate Jerky. All your real estate questions answered by our provocatively lean expert host, Ed Parcaut, MBA, veteran, and president of Lending for Living. And today's special expert guest, real estate advice you won't find anywhere else. Plenty to chew on, starting now.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be here with my special guest, Ted Howze. He is a candidate running for U.S. Representative race in our District 10. And then also, I hadn't seen her in so long. Now she's back 2 weeks in a row. Betsy Hurst-Younger, Realtor from Century 21 up in Waldorf Properties in Twain Harte. So, Dr. Ted, thanks for coming on. And Betsy, thanks so much for coming back again.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. I appreciate having me.
Before I get into a lot of stuff, my first thing is, what's District 10? What areas is that? Do you know?
Yes. The 10th Congressional District is made up of all of Stanislaus County.
Okay.
And then about the southern quarter of San Joaquin. So think all of Stanislaus plus Tracy, Manteca, Ripon, and a portion of Escalon.
Okay. So that's a pretty big area. All right. Now I can get it. All right. So a lot of people ask me, and I say this each week, why we bring other people on than just talking about real estate and what's going on in the mortgage market, what's going on in the real estate market. It's about your community, what you do in your community, and what you can get involved with to help build your community, because where you live is huge. Where you buy your home, values grow and that kind of stuff because of what you do for your community. So I appreciate you coming in today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. So what do I want to get into? So I know politics hasn't been something real big we got into before, but this year is we're seeing a lot of local races that we want to find out, have people come in, candidates talk about who they are, where they're from, that kind of stuff. So before I get into those questions from you, Betsy, you got a smile on your face. Did you want to add anything?
Well, I was just thinking that since I'm not in District 10, it really doesn't matter, because when I was Region 7 chair for the California Association of Realtors, that was almost my primary area.
It was?
Where he's from, yeah.
You mean this area?
Region
that we're in right now?
District 10 is Region 7. Very similar.
So basically what you're saying...
Mine was a little expanded into the foothills, but
right.
It was a very similar area.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what's your background? I mean, I saw somewhere you're a veterinarian,
yes,
correct? Sir. And so why don't you explain where you do that at and what you do for So when you're not running for this, what is your normal day job?
My normal day job is being a large animal veterinarian. I primarily serve the dairy industry here in the Central Valley, located out of Turlock, but our service territory really runs from almost Fresno to Elk Grove, and then foothill to foothill. So the valley truly is my home, and I get to work with people across a wide cross section of our entire community.
So basically, you've talked to a lot of people is basically what you do on a daily basis. Right?
Yes.
Besides animals, they don't talk back, but yeah.
Yes, my job, because we are ambulatory, which means we go out on the
right.
farms and ranches, means that while I am definitely taking care of the health of animals, I'm working with people every single day across a varied cross-section also.
Okay.
So if I had a horse that had colic, I'd call you?
Yes.
Okay.
Your dogs aren't horses. I know you were trying to get him to come out there, but it's not going to happen. They just look like a horse, but they're not a horse. So I have, Marlene gives me a script to get into it, but my first things in my head is, why would you want to run for politics? So why are you running, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. It may seem counterintuitive as a veterinarian who works with animals, but for me, this is really about people. I have spent a large portion of my life working with people. At a political level, I've been a planning commissioner in the city of Turlock. I've been a city council member. But for me, even more in depth, I have been a coach for 2.5 decades. I've worked primarily now at the high school level coaching football players. And what drew me into this was making sure that the young people in our community, in our valley, have the same opportunities that I had growing up. And let me explain that background. I grew up a farm kid in the South Valley working on ranches. My dad was a hired farm manager. He'd come in and straighten out troubled farms, and as soon as he'd straighten them out, as a kid, I always thought he must be really bad at his job. He must get fired all the time because he was constantly moving from job to job. Turned out he was really good at what he did, and he would get farms turned around and then move on to the next operation. But the first 25 years my parents were married, they moved 28 times.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
So we were constantly searching for new homes.
I was gonna say,
I
we would
I
love
felt like
that.
a real estate agent, right? We were always searching for new homes, and we were always getting new churches. So it really accustomed me to making new friends all the time. So that environment, my parents were hardworking, loving people, great people. I couldn't imagine being raised to be, more hardworking and honest than I was. But there wasn't a lot of money to go around. So for me to come out of that family and finally get into college and put myself through school, working as a firefighter and EMT, I worked full time to put myself through school. I feel like I've lived that American dream, where somebody who's willing to put their nose to the grindstone, work hard, can succeed. And this lesson that I've taught all these young people that I've coached through the years about hard work, dedication, paying off, I see our country and specifically our state moving from a system of the American dream, hard work, and values to a society of no consequences for your actions. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't sit on the sidelines and watch this anymore. We complain about it all the time around the dinner table. My wife said, either get involved and do something about it or quit complaining. So the gauntlet was thrown down, and we accepted the challenge. And as a family, we've been working our tails off to win this seat and help institute some of the change we'd like to see instituted.
Yeah, going through this process, talking to people, there's so many things that have changed in our state that you don't know about. Or I didn't know about. One of the things that really bothers me is the fact that lifestyle, the $950 thing, if you steal for $950, there's no consequence.
Yeah.
You can just go steal up to $950 and no one's going to do anything about it.
Well, and since we're specifically on a real estate show, we talk about, what impacts the value of our homes, what impacts our out-of-pocket costs. And people don't look at these early release laws coming out of Sacramento and how it's affecting our communities. But I can tell you one of the impacts, one of my largest supporters is in the real estate industry. And we're talking about how it's impacting people's insurance rates because of crime rates skyrocketing in the Valley, in California. These decisions that are being made by our elected officials are affecting us in our everyday pocketbook. And you would think there'd be a little bit more common sense exercise when somebody says, hey, let's do this, that there'd be an adult in the room that says, hey, guys, that's a really bad idea. Have we looked at the unintended consequences? So this is really where I'm coming from as a business person. Being a large animal veterinarian, I'm not only a veterinarian, I'm a business person. I look at everything with a common sense lens to say, how is that decision going to affect us, and is it a good idea?
Right. And it's basically, as a business owner, how is this, if I do this, how is it going to affect down here, here, and here? And you're right. Our politicians, most of them don't do that because they're career politicians, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what it seems like to me. And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. But it just seems like there's such issues that if you don't get involved, if we don't do stuff, I was in Texas last month, and one of the signs says, California's lost. Texans get out and vote. So, basically we don't go the same way. And that was huge for me to see that, the fact that everybody thinks California is lost.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a little bit of good news. So we really kicked our campaign into high gear over the summer. We've knocked on about 60,000 doors, plus or minus a few, and we see the pendulum really swinging back. People are tired. You can't find a less popular politician in the state of California than Gavin Newsom. And I think it's really energized our middle-of-the-road voters. This district, the 10th, is made up pretty much a third, and a third. Republicans, Democrats, middle-of-the-road, NPPs, nonpartisans. And we're seeing about 70% of those nonpartisan voters tell us they're voting with us because they're tired of the direction that the state's going.
Yeah, we need to. It's getting to a point, if we don't do something, it'll be too late, don't you think? We need to. I don't want to say stand up and fight, but I'm just saying, if you don't like the way that something's doing out there, get out and vote. But read what you're voting for. One of the propositions coming up, Prop 13. I've been saying this every time I can. It's gonna. If you need to vote no on that, that's going to destroy people being able to own homes down the road, and we'll get into that more when we come back from the break, because it doesn't affect you right now. It's a few years down the road, or if you're giving your house to your kids, how they won't be able to afford it because they can't afford the taxes on that property because it adjusted up. So we'll get into that when we get back. All right, hey, so we're going out to a break. If you have questions or comments, you can dial pound 250, say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky. Again, pound 250, you'll be prompted to say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky. Remember, you can send us questions on Facebook or to radio@Real Estate Jerky, and we'll talk to you when we get back. All right, first 10 minutes down. How you that was? What's important for you to get out today?
You talk about what you want to talk about, and we'll
It's
just
not
flow
about me.
with it.
It's not about me. I know who I am. I know who Betsy is.
Yeah.
What do you want to get out? You're on the show. What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I think that's a great question. Ask, say, hey, you know, as far as your campaign is going, what would you want people to know about you?
Well, I'm going to do that, but I'm just telling you that.
I want to get out some of the endorsements that we have. Right. For me, it's really, I think one of the biggest things we have is there's 13 cities in the 10th district. I have the endorsement of the mayors of the 10 largest cities. Right. And a big part of that is having sat on a city council and a budget committee. I understand the fight that they're struggling with, and they are really supporting me because they want help in that fight.
I don't want you to forget anything you're going to say, so keep
I
it
went to a
fresh.
meeting with Mayor Fresno.
Yes.
At
It's on there.
Brothers
The
and
top 3
Riverside,
things.
A couple months ago at Fresno State.
We talked,
I'm getting him ready.
but we talked about
I didn't
it.
know it's last night, last minute, so I'm just
I
making
know,
sure
I
that we're on there so he
At
doesn't
Fresno, I
go.
think both.
No, he's not going to.
Actually,
He's not
go
going
do
to.
a-
This guy
an
didn't-
intake.
Where's that on
fire.
there?
Actually interview the homeless and
Segment
find out
2.
if they're a vet, and if they're a
And
vet,
3.
they need this benefit.
Intro segment
If they're a drug
2.
addict, they need this. If they're an
Blah, blah,
alcoholic,
blah,
they
blah.
need, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Indiana's road because this is our flavor. Here he is, right there.
Every single city's fighting the same battle because of lack of funding. I mean, they're having to make hard choices between public safety or fixing roads.
Right.
Right? I mean, and it's
And
really,
let's not talk about their benefits.
yeah, it's
That
re-
can just keeps getting kicked down the road.
yeah.
Well, what's happening with the high-speed rail? That was another subject.
High-speed rail needs to die.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was falling asleep.
Yeah, that does need to die. A very quick.
No, I would love it to work, but right now it's not going to work. So, all right, we'll come back. Don't follow our script.
I don't even know where we are.
I like free-ranging discussions.
Yeah,
You notice I
that's
don't
where we're
even
gonna
bring
be.
any notes.
That's where we're going to be. So we're coming back in, and then I'm going to bring back about. She wants me to get. I'm going to ask you I'm going to come up with the redistricting. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I don't think it's.
Imperative. Okay.
I don't think anybody knows. Ask me about Prop 13.
I will. I'll say when we left, we were talking about Prop 13. Let's talk a little bit more about Prop 13. I mean, I brought my ballot. I got the ballot. I was like,
You know,
Prop
there's
13.
fake mailers floating around
Yeah.
out
I
there.
don't know them all.
There's Prop 13, then there's another named prop that'll be out there eventually.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to bring Prop 13 back in November, but it's going to be reversed, where a no vote allows the split roll taxes.
This is what they did with the gas tax.
Exactly what they did.
Because people don't read. All right, you ready in there?
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
That's right, we're back. And if you're just tuning in, I'm Ed Parcaut of Lending for a Living and your host, along with my special guest, Ted Howze, candidate running for U.S. Representative race in our District 10, and one of our favorite guest realtors, Betsy Hurst-Younger, Century 21 Wildwood Properties in Twain Harte. All right, before the break, I'm sorry, I was just getting through all that. Before the break, we were talking about Prop 13, which is huge to me. That, you know, I heard about how they were going to bring it back first for just commercial and then see how it went. And my biggest issue that I have with everything that's coming out, they're trying ways to word it to where most people will just read it and vote the way they want them to vote, which is completely opposite of what they think they're voting for. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the gas tax, people voted no, thinking they were getting rid of it, when in reality you were voting that was to keep it. Mm-hmm. And that's why it passed.
Yes.
Because most people don't read. And you need to read. If you're going to vote, please don't just read the first line. Read everything about it, because you're going to get a lot of stuff in your mail that's going to say, we're going to talk about this more, but that's going to lie to you. Or not necessarily lie to you, but skew it in a way that they want you to vote. Correct, Ted?
Yeah, absolutely. And this Prop 13 is just an absolute disastrous example of trying to trick people. They've put it on the ballot under the title of Prop 13. It's a school bond issue.
Right.
And they're spending a lot of money to put out literature, even to the point of putting out deceptive mailers that are fake with Republicans' names on them, trying to get Republicans to vote for it. And they know that it's still probably going to fail because it's the only proposition on the ballot. And we know when there's single propositions, people generally look into them pretty well. They figure them out and they vote no. Now, what the setup is for November of 2020, when they probably put 6 or 7 propositions on the ballot. And what happens is we know when there's multiple propositions, people tend to go down and just vote no on all of them because it takes too much time and effort to look into them. That Proposition 13 or whatever number they number it in November to institute the split roll tax, property tax increase, guaranteed that will be written just like the gas tax to be deceptive, where a no vote allows them to start doing the split roll tax increase. So in my experience, this is what Democrats in the state of California do. They try to trick you, and then they tell you you voted for it. So this whole thing is a disaster. It's created a ton of confusion with campaigns, especially as many of us Republicans have been put on fake mailers. I'm getting right now 20, 25 phone calls a day, people asking me, are you supporting Prop 13? And we have to say, no. This was a mailer that was put out by a Democrat group that's trying to trick everyone.
I think the tricky part is it's called Prop 13.
Why is that tricky?
Well, because Prop 13 back in the late 70s
79,
was
by
a
the way.
huge, proposition that changed a lot.
Yeah.
Tax-wise.
Yeah.
And I think some people are still thinking about that.
Well, and back then it actually got to a point where a lot of places had to lay off, because they weren't getting that tax money anymore. It wasn't adjusting like it was. I don't think most people even know what Prop 13 is, how it protects you as a homeowner with your property taxes to stay at what you bought the place at, and it only can go up so much per year, where what they want to do is change it to where it can go up to whatever the value of your house is. So I tell people, if you bought a $250,000 house under the new Prop 13 that they want, that means over the next, say that your property, we went up 10%, let's just say 5% a year, right? So on 250,000, that's 12,500. In 10 years, that's $120,000. So you'll be paying taxes on $120,000 more in the value of your property, where that's not the case today.
Right.
So what happens is it get to a point where you can't afford to live in your home because you're paying more on property taxes than you are on the mortgage.
Especially as you get older and
Right.
you're on a fixed income. And I think most people don't even realize that this was Howard Jarvis who got Prop 13 pushed through, and we're proud to have the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association endorsement. So we're going to fight hard to make sure that we don't get tricked.
Yeah, because they are going to try to trick you to get more. Because if you read the prop the way they put it on the ballot, because I have my ballot here, mailed to me or whatever, I'm like, it actually sounds like a good thing. They're going to get all this money for the school system, but I know that the more money they get doesn't mean that they're going to spend it wisely.
Well, I think a great question would be, if they did such a great job, where's all the lottery money going for the California schools?
Where is that money going?
Well, it's going into failing districts in the Bay Area and Southern California, districts that are failing so badly that no matter how much money you pour into them, they're never going to succeed. So it's a failed strategy with the money is what it is.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot going on, and you need to get involved. You need to vote, but vote properly. Read the
entire proposition.
Yeah. And if you don't understand it, talk to a few other people about it and get their, what their take on it. All right. So let's talk about you, Ted. Or is it Dr. Ted?
I'm just Ted.
All right. So what do you want people to know about you? I guess during the break, we're talking about what to talk about, and we have a lot of things that Marlene gives me, and she tells me to go through the script. One of the things is, what's your favorite memories growing up in California?
Oh, I'll tell you, my favorite memory growing up in California is, of course, I grew up in the South Valley, where we don't have trees or a Delta breeze, and it gets hot during the summer.
Is that Bakersfield? South Valley? What's
I was
South
from
Valley?
Hanford, which is just below Fresno.
I know where Hanford is.
But my favorite memory, especially here growing up as a kid, was heading over to Pismo on the weekends when it was just hot as could be in the valley, and get over to Pismo Beach. It'd be foggy and cool, and you could get a 2-day break on the coast. And for me,
drive your car or your truck right there on the sand.
Right. At the time, it was 3-wheelers.
Yeah.
Right out on the dunes in Pismo. That was my favorite memory growing up as a kid in the valley.
We did sand rails. Yep.
I'm just looking at you if they're going to add anything else. We did sand rails.
I lived in Morro Bay from about 80 to 89, so I went there a lot.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah, used to get our car stuck on an accident just to see if someone would come help us. That was in the
important,
early
important
80s.
stuff, I tell you.
Exactly.
That,
No, it was fun. It was
that was
fun
the
going
Lincoln
up there.
Town cars back then, the T-Birds,
tell.
big T-Birds you had, the gas guzzlers.
I think my girlfriend actually had an Oldsmobile.
All right, Ted, what do you want people to know about you?
Well, I think besides being a real Valley-centric person, somebody who's rooted here in our community, who's served in our community as an elected official, and worked with thousands of young people in our community, trying to build them to be better people, better leaders somewhere down the road. I think it's important for them to know who I am as a candidate in this election and how we're running. I am a conservative Republican, common sense guy, proud to have the endorsement of the Stanislaus County Republican Party, statewide groups like Impact Republicans, California Republican Women, state college Republicans. We've got several of the individual local college Republicans that are working with our campaign and have endorsed this. Sac State, Stanislaus State, UC Merced have all endorsed us. Back the Badge, California, pro law enforcement group have endorsed us. And even more so because of my time of service as a city council member in Turlock and having worked as part of the budget committee during the worst economic downturn in U.S. history and our success out of doing that, I've developed a great relationship with the mayors here in our district. And the mayors, there's 13 cities in the 10th Congressional District. 11 of them have elected mayors. We've gotten the endorsement of 10 of those 13 mayors and of the 10 largest cities in the 10th Congressional District. And we've made a commitment to really work with them because I think of all the endorsements I'm proudest of, it's the mayors, because these are the people that are most in direct control of improving the quality of life for Valley residents within their communities. And to be able to communicate with them and work on the issues that are important in their communities, which are obviously important to me as a Valley person, I think that's where we're going to be able to make the greatest impact. I think that's a huge positive statement about me as a candidate. And I don't like to negatively campaign. It's definitely not my vibe. But I do think it says a lot when you're a freshman member of Congress, our opponent Josh Harder, and he hasn't built the relationship with the people that are serving their communities. And so those people, after a little over a year in office, have all said, hey, we'd rather work with Ted as our member of Congress. So we take that as a very positive statement for us. And I think that's one of the messages that we're trying to push out. Also, really proud. I mean, we have a long list of school board members and school board presidents and police officers that have endorsed us. But just yesterday, we released former Congressman Jeff Denham's endorsement. Mm-hmm. Jeff fought hard for the Valley for 8 years as a member of Congress. And even though we have a crowded Republican field in this race, Jeff came out and tapped us as the Republican that he's endorsing in the primary and in the general election, and has said, we're the guy.
All right.
Nice.
So, what do you think the top 3 issues are here in the Central Valley, or in general, what you think?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and this is based on actual face-to-face conversations. This goes back to all the doors we've knocked on since July. We're listening to people in the Valley, and they've said it's very simple. Cost of living is huge for everyone here. It seems like no matter how hard we work, you can't get ahead. Housing prices are too high, and there aren't enough of them. So affordability, number one. Number two, healthcare, the cost and the affordability and availability of quality healthcare. It's on everybody's minds because if you're working and you're paying some portion of your healthcare costs, you know just exactly how expensive it is. And then even if you have it, trying to get service can be very difficult here in the Valley.
I'm going through that right now.
Yeah. And then lastly, border security is on everybody's mind. And surprisingly enough, it is on immigrants' minds too. I work in the dairy industry. I talk, across people, across every ethnic boundary. And here in the Valley, we hear it constantly that, everyone would like to make sure our borders are controlled because they not only want to stop human trafficking and drug trafficking,
right,
but they don't want wages depressed. Everybody has said that illegal immigration hurts wages here in the Valley, and they would like to see that stopped.
Sorry, I was reading.
Okay.
I apologize. Listening, but reading. I think that's huge. And, you see a lot of in the past, people talking about how bad things are going and how, right now everybody's against border control. That's horrible that we're thinking a certain way. And then they show the videos, every past president prior to the president now saying the exact same thing. And it just gets irritating that people change their positions to fit them, not the people.
Absolutely.
And that's what bothers me. It's just like, say the same thing. I have to in my industry. If I did that, I'd be in jail. But anyway, hey, we got to go to a break. All right, so we're going to a break. Remember, you can find us on Google, if you Google us, and you can get a hold of us and leave your comments or questions at #250. Say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky, and we'll talk to you and get back. What's the matter? Did I say something wrong? I looked at you or not. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail this week. We had one lady call. We had, who did we have on first? Who was the first person we had on? Doug Ridenauer for mayor, right? I think it was for mayor, right? Was Doug Ridenauer? No. Who did we have on first?
It was Doug for mayor.
Was it Doug?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I had people, lady, are you going to have other candidates on or just you're going to? And I'm like, that was at 12:30. I'm like, if she would have just listened to the show another 5 minutes, it would have said, hey, if you're a candidate and you want to be on the show, yeah. My God, you really have to call me messages.
You didn't turn it around like my negative call I got, and I turned it around and said, hey, thanks for letting me know you listen to the show.
I think I'm the only candidate that will come on and do live unscripted shows like this, because I know we've done a lot of other stuff, and the hosts have always told us, we've called so-and-so, and they, we just get there, they can't make time, or another campaign won't return their phone calls, and, I'm not afraid of this.
Yeah.
Good.
So
Thanks.
do you have kids?
I have 3 sons.
They all play football.
All
Do you want to talk about this on air?
Sure.
Do you want that
I
on
did,
air?
but I didn't want to ask him if he said, no, I don't have kids.
Or what do you want to get into?
Move on and ask questions of interest, really, if you have interest. I saw you had a note about homelessness.
Yeah, I think
in there. I'm more than willing to.
The problem with homelessness is no matter what we do, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, you can't throw enough money at it.
Everybody blames Ronald Reagan, right, for shutting the things. No, it was Kennedy who started shutting the actual hospitals that were run.
And the liberal courts.
And they got rid of them. And then what happened?
The mental health ones?
Right. And then what happened is Ronald Reagan finally got to a point where the state hospitals that they had weren't doing anything for anybody at all, so he finally closed those. But it was Kennedy who started the process.
Yeah.
But everybody forgets that because it's so far back.
It's always when it closes,
right? They remember that Ronald Reagan did what he did, but there was one guy, I forget the name, I read it somewhere, that it was the one who actually convinced Kennedy to make the changes. Yeah, so anyway.
Well, and the biggest thing is the reason Reagan pulled that trigger was because they were facing constant, nonstop lawsuits over the institutions.
Right. Bring it up when we get on there.
Leaving the bull behind. It's Real Estate Jerky.
That's right, we're back. I'm here with my special guest, Ted Howze. He's a candidate running for U.S. Representative race in our District 10, and guest realtor Betsy Hurst-Younger, Century 21 Wildwood Properties in Twain Harte, and I'm Ed Parcaut, your host. All right, when we left, we were talking about certain things that were important to that you thought were important, that are bothering I can't even talk today, messing with our area that we need to work on. I know one of my notes said something about homeless, and I think during the break we were talking about that part of it, and I wanted to bring it back on air. Basically, for me, a lot of times I feel that, yes, we have a homeless problem, but we can't fix something that helps somebody who doesn't want help, right? And from what I'm hearing from a bunch of cops who go to places and they try to give people services, get them help, they don't want help. So I think that even though that's a subject that people talk about, I don't know how to fix it. Do you have an idea how to fix that?
Yeah, I could.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. There you go.
I could write a dissertation on trying to fix it. Listen, you're right on. You can't help people who don't want to help themselves. We do not have a quote-unquote homeless problem. What we have is a drug addiction and mental health problem in the state of California, fueled by state regulations that aren't pressing charges against people for committing quality of life crimes and are just churning people in and right back out of the system. So there's no consequences. We were talking earlier today about anybody who steals less than $950 doesn't even get charged anymore. Who are the first people to figure out how to break rules and get away with them? Kids and criminals, right? And
definitely kids.
Yeah, as long as they know there's no consequence to what they're doing, they're going to keep doing it all the time. What would I do with the homeless situation? I would change our approach. Instead of just continuing to fund feeding and housing the homeless, or probably better described as the criminally vagrant, which is the issue that we're having. We need to take that money and we need to, first of all, re-empower law enforcement and our district attorneys to enforce quality of life laws. If you're urinating or defecating in public, if you are threatening kids walking to school and stealing their cell phones and, peddling them for pennies on the dollar down the street to fuel your drug habit, you need to be arrested. You need to go to jail, and you need to be held responsible. Now, I'm not saying we can arrest our way out of the problem. That we know that doesn't work either. We will just fill our jails. But what we need to do is we need to enforce these laws, and we need to convince people, okay, listen, when you're ready to step into a program, a diversionary program, and make a difference, drug, alcohol therapy, mental health therapy, and let's not kid ourselves, our local police officers know who these people are and what their issues are. We talk to them all the time. They know most of what they call our frequent flyers by name and what their problems are. We're triaging them already. We can work with our law enforcement and our faith-based community to triage the people that are living on the streets. We know who they are, what the issue is. We push them in the proper diversionary program when they're ready. And then what we tell them is, when you complete that program, what we're going to do is we're going to assign you a life coach. We're going to put you into transitional housing, and we'll put you into a job skills training program. So what we want to do is encourage people to change their life, to get on the right path, but then we're going to help them. We're going to spend taxpayer dollars on the homelessness crisis one way or the other. The question is, are we going to spend it continuing to give people fish, or are we going to spend that money to teach them to fish so that someday they ultimately become productive members of society again? I'm a 100% advocate for teaching people to fish. You help them get out of the situation they're in, help them get diversionary therapy, help them get trained, get them back into a productive role. I think that's the only way we're ever going to approach fixing this crisis, is to attack the root causes. Because what the Democrats have done in this state, and my opponent who's trying to get, congressional bills passed to declare homelessness a state of emergency so they can get federal disaster relief funding, is just throw more money at it. And the Democrats' approach to fixing homelessness is just like trying to put a bonfire out by throwing stacks of $100 bills on it. Right? It's not productive. It's never going to work, and they're ultimately going to make, especially our communities, pay the price through higher insurance rates, more crime. It's costing us big out of our own pockets.
Right, because during the break we were talking about, everybody thinks that Ronald Reagan is the cause of our issue right now, when in reality, if you go back, it was President Kennedy who started closing the hospitals, the mental health. He was somebody told, I forget who the person was that advised him on doing that, and they started slowly closing them back then all the way, and then Ronald Reagan period, they got to a point where I think they just weren't working. You said it was lawsuits?
Yeah, well, Reagan was facing a situation where the state of California was consistently being sued by, I don't remember if it was the ACLU, but it was far left groups that were suing over the conditions of these state-run mental hospitals that were overrun at the time with the lack of funding because of President Kennedy cutting off the funding to a lot of these institutions. So let's just classify it as a failure at the top, at the federal government, and we need to address it. The bottom line is we have to address treating the root cause, not just putting Band-Aids on the problem.
Right. Because you can't just blame both of those people for our issues there. It's how do we deal with it? And people need to want to get help. For most mental ill people, and that's what we're talking about, they don't know. They get on their drugs, they feel great, and they get off their drugs because it makes them feel lethargic or whatever it is that their problem is, and then they self-medicate, right? But you can't always help those people.
Well, and the issue's even bigger because I go back to talking about how kids know how to work the system. The homeless people know how to game the system too. My son's an EMT, works for an ambulance company in Sacramento, and he gets about a third of his day eaten up transporting homeless people to local hospitals who are just looking for an overnight stay and a meal. And it's so much so that, I hear him tell the stories. It harkens back to when I was a firefighter. I had tons of great stories from working in the community. He now has them as an EMT because he says, we get to where we haul somebody in. The staff recognizes them. They even know what their favorite sandwich is. So they're just gaming the system because they know they cannot be turned away. They have to be triaged. Now they have laws. If you come in and the weather's cold, they have to be given a coat before they leave. the hospital. Now, I'm not saying people aren't in need and we shouldn't be compassionate people, but we're dealing with a subset of people who know how to game the system.
And it goes, I mean, this is the same thing people used to do a lot during the holidays, like Thanksgiving, right? To get meals to people, right? And then they come to the house, drop off a meal, and they're already sitting there with 3 other meals on their table. So just those, they're always going to have somebody who knows how to game the system and take advantage of it, but we still need to help people. Right, Betsy?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking when they go to the hospital, what insurance pays that bill? Because don't you have to have an address in order to have Medi-Cal?
You and I are paying it because they certainly don't have the resources to pay it. So,
Interesting.
and they can't be turned away.
All right.
So we do have Medicare for all already.
Yeah. I don't know.
If you don't have a job, you're taken care of, I guess.
Right. Well, my husband and I are paying $1,740 a month for health care. And that's because we're both self-employed. And my husband's had some health issues, and the bills are coming in, and you pay a copay, and you still get a big, huge bill, and it's like, oh my God, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
So now I'm paying for somebody else to go to the hospital too.
We all are.
So when it comes to one of your issues you were talking about is medical insurance, right?
Right.
What's your take on that? How to fix that system?
Well, I think it's a pretty straightforward solution that nobody wants to talk about. Number one, how do we make healthcare more affordable? We open it up as a competitive market, right? We need to make sure, and I think the Trump administration's taken a great first step. When we walk into a doctor's office or hospital, every price needs to be posted. People need to be told up front what something's going to cost. That way, somebody who walks in with insurance doesn't pay 5 times more than somebody who's ultimately going to pay the bill out of their own pocket. I think we need to get rid of state insurance commissioners. Number one, there's stories all over all the time about state insurance commissioners being corrupt. We need one panel of non-partisan medical economists to set kind of what that scale on insurance and medical delivery is going to be. And then I think we need to open up competition against state lines. Shouldn't matter where you get your insurance from. And lastly, if government is going to make an investment in anything, it should be advancing technology. Even in the veterinary field, my own field, we're facing a lot of competition now from people who are wanting to do telemedicine. So much so that the state of California Veterinary Medical Board has stepped in and said, hey, we're prohibited as veterinarians in the state from participating in telemedicine. I think that's bunk. I think if you are capable of getting your medical delivery, you should be able to get it wherever you want. Competition does amazing things. And let me pull one example. I talk about this a lot when we're out stumping with people. Have either of you had LASIK eye surgery?
No.
I did.
Okay. So if you look at LASIK eye surgery, when it came out about 20 years ago, it was $4,000 per eye. It was difficult to find a doctor. It would take you 6 months to get it. It's a field, ironically, that is not covered by health insurance, right? If you want to get LASIK eye surgery, you're going to pay out of pocket for it. Well, in 20 years' time, what's happened to LASIK? Well, you can go Google it right now. You can find LASIK eye surgery on special for $750 an eye. We've done this to see it. It ranges $750 to $900. You can find a doctor willing to do it usually in less than a month, and the procedure is better than it's ever been. This is what competition does. Over time, it has driven the cost of LASIK eye surgery down to a quarter of what it was because these doctors are having to compete on reputation for the procedure. This is what we could do to medical care in our country. Now, how do we cover people who can't afford any health insurance? The answer is the county hospital method again. And here's what I would propose. I have a son who's, I told you, an EMT. He's working his way through paramedic school. He wants to be a surgeon. And I think we should make a contingency of going to medical school in this state. If you're going to a public school, that when you graduate, you're going to do a 2-year internship in a state hospital. Because I have a great friend who worked in the LA County hospital system. He said they created the best doctors in the world there with their young doctors coming through seeing anything. Now, I know we're up against a break. If you want to talk about it more when we get back, I'd be happy to talk about how I would service the low-income population.
Yeah, well, why don't we pick it up when we come back, because I'm sure I can't get you to stop right at a certain point. All right, we're going out to break. Let me remind you, you can find every one of our shows via podcast on iHeartMedia.com, also on YouTube. You can just Google us at Real Estate Jerky. You can follow us on Facebook. You got questions, dial pound 250 on your mobile device. You'll be prompted to say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky. You can leave us a message, and we'll be right back. All right. right, so we got probably 9 minutes and 3 seconds on our next set.
Getting a cramp in the back of my leg.
Well, get up and walk
Or left
around.
leg. Hamstring.
Tearing hamstrings are never good.
So I was going to say, how does the cow call you?
The cow.
You can tell a veterinarian. So, hey, I'm still trying to figure out how the cow calls them. How's everybody do the same thing? Couldn't even get into that. Had to run over about the other stuff.
Everybody's loved our TV ad that did that. Have you seen it?
I did, I saw it.
Which was so funny because that was not written into the script. We were out shooting that ad on Verber Dairy out here in West Modesto, and as I was delivering that line, because Congress needs a big boot in the, my friend's dog ran in, stood right between my legs, and barked right at the appropriate time. Everybody's shooting, and the TV crew's like, "Oh, tell us you got the dog."
Yeah, it was awesome.
No, the shot was from the waist up.
No.
We didn't get it. But they all liked it so much, they're like, we can't use the dog bark because it just doesn't make any sense. You
Without
don't
the
see
dog.
the dog.
Yeah.
So they decided, well, we've been on a dairy and we've been shooting with cows the whole time, that they would use a moo instead.
Yeah,
and that's where the whole
awesome.
idea for that
I
name.
loved it.
Just dumb luck.
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, so you know where Kerman is?
What, I can't hear you anymore?
Yeah. My husband's family was Hearst Trading, and they had 25 acres out on Lincoln. Is Lincoln the name of the street
I
that has
don't
all the palm
remember.
trees lined up
I don't
as you're
know.
leaving, like Madera area or something, and you're driving out?
I thought that was Chowchilla that had all the palm trees running
this
down the
was
main.
No, that's 29 palms.
That's that too.
29 stumps. I
Indian
was in the
Wells.
Navy, so I
Yeah.
totally know where all that crap.
And
Thank you for your
And-
service.
Oh, thanks. That's when you said Hanford. I know a little more.
Consolidated Milling and Hearst Trading.
Are you
That was
ready
their
over
company.
here?
So they were
You got
a food and
9
grain company.
Hey,
Yeah.
9 minutes, 10 seconds, and then I gotta be here for 2
all we got?
outros. So that's
Okay.
like another 3 minutes. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
You ready in there? I'm so...
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
We're back for our final segment of the show. I'm Ed Parcaut, mortgage advisor at Lending for Living, with my special guest, Ted Howze, candidate running for U.S. Representative race in District 10. And I also have Betsy Hurst-Younger, Realtor with Century 21 Wildwood Properties in Twainhart. And so you probably don't know, the reason I do that every show, we actually had a caller come in and says, I caught you in the middle of the show. I had no idea who was on the show. So that's why when we come back for every break, that's what we do. So when we left last time, this last break, we were talking about, what were you talking about?
We were talking about providing health care to
Correct.
those who can't afford it.
See, I don't remember everything anymore. Don't tell my wife, even though I tell her that. So I think it's very important. So let's finish that, because you said you just go to break and you'd pick it up when we got back.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure I emphasize that any of us in the state of California who go to a professional school, like myself going to veterinary school, I knew at the time when I was paying my tuition, even though I paid my way through fully by working, that our education through a professional school is subsidized by the state of California.
And which school did you go to?
UC Davis.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah. And so for my education through veterinary school, I only paid about 10% of what it actually cost to educate me. Wow. The state picks up the rest because they view it as a public good that you're serving the communities. And so the same is true with medical school. Mm-hmm. Tuition only covers a very small part of what it costs to educate a doctor. And I've spoken with a lot of doctors. I've spoken with aspiring medical students, my son being one of them, that if they understand on the upfront end as they're applying to medical school, that they're going to be required as a condition of the privilege of the taxpayers of the state of California educating them, that they're going to have to do 2 years worth of internship in a state hospital serving the people of the community of our state, that's fine. They would still accept that to be able to go to school, as long as they're paid through that internship to cover their costs. They don't want to have to spend more money to serve the community. And to me, I think that's the easiest way that, number one, we can serve the underserved population that don't have money in their pockets. We could staff our county hospitals with young doctors that are each overseen by, experienced doctors. We can provide that care, and we can train great doctors in our community, because let's face it, you're going to see a lot of tough cases coming in through county hospitals. And my friend who's worked in LA County Hospital has said that they turn out the best doctors in the world there. They actually have people fight who want to work at the LA County Hospital back when he was there. I think that's number one. And I think number two, we really have to do that because it brings doctors in and it gets them experience within our community. They may actually want to stay and work here when they're done because they get to see how great it is instead of as soon as their education is done, they want to bail. And the reason this is so important is for our veterans because we are having a difficult time attracting doctors to work within the VA system here in the Valley. And I think two things. Number one, if we were putting people working into our counties and they got to know people, they would set down roots, more likely to set down roots, number one. And then number two, I know this is kind of off the topic, but we really need to push an Accountability to Veterans Act. Part of my coaching through the decades here in the Valley is this is an economically depressed area and compared to the other states. We have a much higher rate of enlistments amongst our high school kids here than we do in other parts of the state. Unfair that by the time they get done in their service and they want to come back and live in the Valley, that they have to commute out to get specialty care in the VA system or even any care at all because we don't have enough doctors. We need to start running programs that groom doctors to want to live and work here in the Valley long term. And I think getting those young doctors right out of school, getting them into county hospitals, getting them accustomed to the community is a great way to do that.
Well, think about where I live. We have a VA, facility, but if they really need lots of care or extensive care, then they've got to go out, and it's like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of just letting veterans go anywhere. Just once you're done, just give them the insurance so they can go anywhere and pick their doctor.
Like a normal insurance policy.
Correct.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, because you serve, what you do, and then you get out, you have this benefit, but no one ever really uses it
Kind of like a form of
because
segregation.
you can't go there.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you can't get really good service. I'm lucky. My wife works for Kaiser, so it's some of the best. If you're an insurance company that owns hospital, it's a totally different game than if you're a hospital who take insurances.
Sure.
So, I mean, even Kaiser starting their own medical school.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my oldest son just applied to it. So.
Oh, did he?
Awesome.
I'm surprised he didn't want to be a vet.
I think all of my kids decided seeing Dad get up and go to work at 4 a.m. and go to work in the cold and the rain and the heat was a little bit much for them. Now, they all enjoyed it. They all grew up doing surgeries with Dad. 2 of my 3 sons are really medically inclined. My middle son decided he wanted to be a sheriff's deputy instead of a doctor, and I think that's great. It's his way of serving the community. So
That's great.
See what my grandparents had a dairy. What got me is when my grandfather shoved his arm. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was like, that's not what I want to do for a living. That's it.
And you said your wife is a teacher?
yes, and for some reason I have an affinity for teachers. My late wife was a teacher who taught handicapped children. She did adapted PE for Stanislaus State. I lost her in 2013. I was very fortunate a couple of years later to meet another amazing teacher and
They are
Get-
kind of a certain
get
mold, right?
remarried. And I think for me, it's because I gravitate towards working with young people, and that's the coach in me. I really like that high school. So, my wife works at a high school. She's a student activities director at St. Mary's High School in Stockton. I've, of course, coached there and coached in Denair and all over the Valley here through the years. So I just gravitate towards that. If you were to walk into my campaign office today, you would see a campaign office full of volunteers that most of them are in their early 20s. And I like that young, aggressive, really willing to work hard, trying to get their feet under them for life. And I'll take volunteers like that all day long and try to help put them on a great path towards a future.
And see, I think the 22 and below, those people are totally different than the ones above them. They're totally
the
different.
above are the millennials.
Right. I'm just saying you can totally see
What are we
the
going to call the
difference.
22 and below?
Good workers. So I have a few of them. They're amazing workers. They remind me of my generation, what we did. It's the old joke where if you get to work 10 minutes early, you're on time. You get there on time, you're late. Anyway, so that's basically what these people do. They come, they're on time. They work hard. And then go home and play.
Right.
That's what I want. We have about 2 minutes left. One of my there's a civics lesson here. What House of Representative? What do they do? What do you do when you get this position? I mean,
Well, what they are supposed to do are, number one,
I only got a minute.
write the laws for our country,
Bills. Yeah.
build a budget. The Congress is supposed to actually frame our budget. They are the gatekeeper for the taxpayers' money. And then lastly, your congressional representative for your district is your direct link from your local governance to the federal government, especially when it comes to getting grant monies. And one example is all your police and firefighter grants through SAFER. And that's what really is the big interest in our communities is trying to fund our public safety through a lot of these federal grants that are coming in. So you have your hands full. You better be willing to work. And I've got a track record and a history my entire life that says I'll work.
Well, you were going to say bills over there?
Bills, yeah.
They do the bills.
They pass the bills.
Is that what they do?
Create the bills. Well, we create the bills and send them over to you guys, right?
Well, no, Congress writes their own legislation and passes it. So
Okay.
Yeah. This is not like that old, someday I'll be a bill from when you were a kid.
No,
Remember that?
Schoolhouse Rock.
That's right. We just dated ourselves.
I was going to say that was after me.
Whatever.
I know.
That was before you.
No, Schoolhouse Rock was after.
Yeah, whatever. All right. So, Ted, thanks for we're not getting rid of you right now, but thanks for being here today. We really appreciate it. People knowing, who you are, getting out there, what what you want to do if you get the position. Please, and one of the things I want to say, please vote. Know what you're doing. Read who you're voting for. Find out about them. Research them. Make sure you vote properly. Don't just vote because you can vote. Because
And it's by mail.
what's by mail?
Our voting is by mail.
Is
Is it
it?
voting? Is it everyone's voting?
Not
by mail?
not
No,
everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Tuolumne County.
That's Tuolumne County. We're talking about right here. It's
So I've already
not.
got my ballot.
Well, that's great. We have to go.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ted.
Thank you.